Welcome to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast with your host, Brandon Seigel. I'm a published author, speaker, entrepreneur, and private practice strategist dedicated to transforming the way that healthcare functions. This podcast is all about empowering you to create the change you want to see. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Private Practice Survival Guide. In this episode, I brought back Amy Lafko. You guys know she is the leader of people. So today we're talking about building leaders who build leaders. Can you believe that? Succession planning that actually works. So many practices I come across, Amy, don't have succession. And so why don't we start with, if you don't mind, quickly, share what succession means to you. How do you define succession to these organizations? Because they only think about it from selling their practice. And I think they lose sight on what succession really means from an organizational standpoint.
When we think about succession, the real goal, whether it's that you're selling your practice or you're stepping away to do something else, it's having someone who can succeed in your role. And it may not be one people, it may take two people, whatever the case, but it's who can fill in the work that needs to get done that I'm doing now. And that's really what it comes down to. One of my favorite examples was a woman who, when she started her practice, she built out her org chart for when it was going to be in the long run. And so she had all these different positions that didn't exist. At the beginning, she was like 3 people. But she created in her mind what all these different pieces were. And she even created that, what if I don't want to do this, my CEO job in 5 years? What is that going to look like? Or 10 years? And then she figured out what all the responsibilities were. And that's actually what succession planning is figuring out what work needs to get done and then where or who might be the best person for that work to get done. Because you're right, it's not necessarily just whether or not I'm going to sell my business.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a matter of giving people new opportunities of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And as we grow, roles look different. So a private practice with 10 employees will look different when it's at 20 employees. It will. And the roles and the needs and the wants and how we build out departments and all of that. And so why do most practices fail to develop their next generation of leaders?
I think it comes down to a couple potential reasons. The first one is the practice owner is a certain set of behavioral styles. They're outgoing. They are motivated by individual reward and recognition, and they think everybody's built like they are. So their assumption is, well, someone else is going to come along and be exactly like me. And I'm like, well, actually, if they were exactly like you, they've already set up their own practice. But they're not, if they aren't like you, they're going to want to work for you and develop some skill sets, but it's not going to be who they are naturally. So I think that's the first one. Practice owners mistakenly think, well, they're just like me. Well, no, they would be owning their own practice if they were just like you. The second thing that can often happen is they think to themselves, I want to give up ownership of this, but I really can't because it's my name on the door. And so the owner of the practice can't truly step back, and that gets in our way. And I think one of the other thing that gets in the way is if a practice owner is great at certain parts of leading others or managing the practice, they assume everybody else is going to be good at those same things. And they might not realize what their blind spots are, so they don't worry about those pieces. Whereas we actually want to evaluate the roles outside of who the people are.
And one of the things I'm running into with a lot of practices that I come across is they get stuck in this idea that, it's all about just delegation, and they don't quite really understand what development of leadership is. And I think one of the mistakes that I find is a lot of people identify future leaders based on clinical skills, and they don't know how to develop the leadership skill set. So when I ask, for example, a physical therapist to handle what I call as an HR-oriented matter, it usually becomes a disaster. And so what does development look like to you? How would you differentiate delegation to development and whatnot?
I think one of the important things that you already highlighted is that delegation is giving of the ownership and the responsibility of the work, but it's not related to whether or not they have the skill set. And so you can delegate to someone to do work. And if they have the skill set, great, just delegate it. But if they don't have the skill set, then you can't delegate until you've given them the development opportunities. You know, what I find fascinating is that we have practices who want to send their teams to all sorts of technical training. But then you're right. They think, well, if they're good at trigger point, they must be great at, performance management conversations or holding someone accountable or, giving direction. And they're not related. So I think when I look at development, just like our practices, you can evaluate someone's soft skill competencies, their leadership competencies. You can actually assess that. You can figure out what they currently have. You can determine what they actually need, and then you can create a development plan. And for anyone who's a clinician out there, doesn't that sound exactly like what we do with our patients? It's the same ideas. And yet somehow when it comes to the soft skills, and I'm doing air quotes, the quote unquote soft skills of leadership, we assume that those should be through osmosis, but that gait analysis required training, review, more review, and then letting them fly. So I struggle with why such the difference, but I think it's because we just have this mindset of, well, that's just inherent. There's still a lot of people who actually think you're either born a leader or you're not, and they neglect the fact that so much of it is a skill set.
And it's interesting because when we say born a leader or not, I think what we're trying to say, and I could be wrong here, this is just my perspective.
Yeah.
There are people that naturally are fulfilled in a leadership role. And I think sometimes people drive to a leadership role and are not fulfilled by it based on other transactional goals. And so what I find is I find a lot of unfulfilled leaders. And I don't know if you find that, but I find a lot of people when I'm like, hey, you're a manager. And they're like, I hate my job. And I'm like, why? I'm like, I have to deal with people. I have to be a babysitter. I have to be a mommy. I have to be a daddy. I have to be a policewoman, policeman, whatever it may be. And I think part of it is they don't necessarily have what I will say is the leadership skills yet. And I don't know if they have the right leadership mindset. I think mindset and skills are how we develop the future of how we lead others. But you may disagree. Any feedback?
No, I completely agree. And in my book and in my work, we always start with mindset. I always like to ask people, even in conflict, what's your mindset? What's your feeling and what you're thinking around conflict? And when people come back with, it's terrifying, it makes me anxious, I hate it, and it's fighting, that's a mindset that we need to work through.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a skill set for it. There are a lot of managers and leaders who do truly hate their job. And it's not because they're not great leaders. There's a couple system things setting them up for failure. I run into this all the time, particularly with mid-level managers. They're not really clear on what authority they have. So they can bring an issue to the owner, but the owner's really the only one who gets to decide. So now I don't know if I should bring it to the owner. So there's a lack of clarity about what you're truly responsible for beyond just making sure we get enough visits. Mm-hmm. I work with leaders all the time who don't understand financial literacy. And this is, you see it every day with what you do. So again, the leader is shortchanging what that person actually needs to succeed. So we're either not giving them the skills that they need, or we've set up systems where they don't know. And I've literally asked managers, so do you have hire fire? And they're like, what does that even mean? I'm like, can you hire people and can you fire them? They'll say, I don't really know. I'm like, can you write someone up? I don't really know. Well, what do you do when you need to write someone up? Well, I try to talk to the director, but sometimes they don't really see it. So then it just kind of sits there. We need clear lanes and guardrails for our leaders. And then we need to figure out, this is the expectation. What parts do you need help with? Where do we need to get you additional training? If you bring on someone new to your clinic, you're going to say to them, listen, what courses do you need to go to this year? And what training do you need? Where do you need to boost your skill set when it comes to technical stuff? It's the same with soft skills and leadership and management skills.
Yeah. So one of the things we're trying to be in an organization is proactive versus reactive. And I guess one of my questions for you is, how do I identify when someone is ready for that next step of responsibility before they ask for it? Like, what does that look like? Are there certain signs? How do you recommend an organization kind of defining that responsibility upgrade within their organization?
You're asking your staff every single quarter, what are your goals coming up? What else do you want to work on? Are there things that you'd like to take on? I personally hate the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? But I'm darn glad that my leaders always asked me it. Deb Bradley was the best mentor I ever had. And every single time we met, she would say to me, what did you do to add to your resume this month? And my gosh, at one point I said, Deb, are you looking for me to go somewhere? She goes, no, but you should always be building your resume. So what are you doing to build your resume? And so you start by asking everybody, what are you interested in? What are you looking for? One of my past clients just reached out and they put in this new awesome position. It's called the AI ambassador. It is not for extra money. It is not for a bonus. It is simply the person who's like obsessed with everyone using the ambient scribe stuff and all the AI technology available to us in the clinic. And she's like, that's her first rung. So, Brandon, you and I've talked about, I love this analogy of the career rock wall instead of a career ladder. So instead of saying to someone, what promotion do you want next? We start by asking them, what skills do you want to develop? How do you want to grow? I've put people in positions before the positions even existed. And then I just waited till the position caught up and they could officially take it. I had a scheduler who was phenomenal at so much more than just scheduling patients. She was doing all sorts of things and we're building up her portfolio. And then finally a position became available and she was ready for it.
Yeah. I'll leave us with this idea just so that everyone has this in their mind. We build continuing ed as one of our benefits, but so often than not, we put no structure to where and what drives continuing ed. And I think continuing ed should drive growth as an individual and as a professional. And so, what are the areas of expertise they want to develop, and let that be the road to responsibility for them? And so,
Absolutely.
I,
Yeah. And we want to develop it. I just did a workshop for a whole clinic. And it was frontline all the way up to the director on conflict. And my gosh, why would I want to save conflict resolution skills till you're a director? Man, if I can have my frontline solving their own conflicts, how much better would that make my life? I'm doing a physician workshop on conflict next week. And again, it's this idea of like, what is the definition of leader?
yeah.
One of the greatest things that I got to experience was the LAMP program through Ally at the American Physical Therapy Association. And it starts with leading yourself, not even leading others. So for some people, they need communication skills just to be a good team member. They need conflict resolution skills just to be a good team member, not because they're going to move into a leadership position.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, I get back to this happiness in the workplace. And I think when I look at connectedness, when I look at progress, everyone needs to feel connected in progress.
Mhm.
And the other is, people need to feel that they have choices, they have
Yeah.
decisions. I get to choose this path, I get to choose this. The more that we can bring those three things together, I think the more that we're building leaders in which we can have succession for the future, because succession shouldn't happen when someone's ready to retire. It should happen way before that. And it should be the skill sets that we adopt, learn, and develop throughout our tenure in an organization. So I thank you for being part of this episode. Why don't you share quickly how everyone can get in touch with you. It will also be in the show notes, but those who are listening in their car, I want them to hear it from you as well.
So you can always just check me out on LinkedIn, Amy Lafko, pretty simple. You can email me, amy@cairncs.com. Yes, it's in the show notes, and hopefully you won't be emailing me from the car while driving, so check the show notes for that. I've got a website. You can go amylafko.com or you can go to cairncs.com, and you'll be able to find what you need to find. And of course, the book is always out there, and that's on Amazon. You can find my website from there.
Awesome. And if all else fails, reach out to me and I would love to connect you with Amy. So thank you for tuning into this episode of the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. Don't forget, like us, subscribe, write a review, share us with your friends and family, because together we can thrive, not just survive. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. Exciting news. We're now available everywhere, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to YouTube or anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts. So watch, listen, and reach out. If you love this episode, please drop a 5-star review. It truly means the world to me. Are you looking for more ways to elevate your practice? If so, now is your chance. Reach out, go to my website, or email me at brandon@wellnessworksmp.com. And remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.